Hey guys, Paul here. So I've been playing a lot of different card games recently, in addition to Yu-Gi-Oh, just dabbling, and I've come to a lot of interesting conclusions, and it's made me kind of like and dislike Yu-Gi-Oh more in different ways, so I just wanted to talk about it all over here. This will mostly be generalizations since, I don't want to get like too into the weeds, but yeah, so recently I've tried out the Digimon trading card game. I've also played Vanguard fairly recently, and Pokemon recently as well, the Pokemon TCG. And these are all pretty fun games in their own right. I've enjoyed them. I was playing Pokemon on the iPad, just, the digital app to play against people. I played Digimon because Alec has been really into it. Alec and Alex have. They've been buying Pokemon boxes and stuff like that. So I've been sort of trying it out just for fun. And I played Vanguard a couple years back. I know it got like some reboot recently, but I've played it recently enough that I know the general idea. And of course, I've played Yu-Gi-Oh my whole life, it feels like. So, yeah. Having played these card games, I have a lot of appreciation for, I guess, what you would call the more standard card game. That is to say, with Digimon and Pokemon, all that stuff, I like the elements of resource management and resource building. So, like in Pokemon, you have to use energies to use your strong attacks. You can only, attach one energy in a given turn, just normally. And so on your first turn, you won't be able to just absolutely kind of steamroll your opponent. You have to build up the energies and stuff like that in order to play. And, a lot of these card games seem to have kind of similar things. They all have very similar sort of win conditions. There's like the prize card things, the security stuff in Digimon, that sort of stuff. I like that these games all have a slower pace. I like that you are typically able to sort of take your time with your strategy and it builds over time, it ramps up. If you are managing resources well, then you'll get, a good pool of things available to you, but you're never really going to be winning like on turn one. And barring extremely bad luck, it's also nice that a game will typically go a few or several turns, no matter what. Even if your opponent's deck is better than yours, they're playing better than you, you'll always feel as though, your strategy is at least getting to progress, even if it's not necessarily good enough to win. So yeah, these games, I guess they're more slow and steady. They're more, there's kind of more of a back and forth. You also don't really interact nearly as much on your opponent's turn in most of these games. Yu-Gi-Oh, of course, has like lots of ways to negate stuff your opponent does or just interact. But in most of these card games, once it's your opponent's turn, you kind of just sort of watch and observe and strategize, but like you don't do loads of interacting with them. Now compare it, or rather contrast, this to Yu-Gi-Oh, which is a game where it's fast, and there's also not really like a sort of resource system, and there aren't really any limiters in place. So what do I mean by that? Well, basically in Yu-Gi-Oh, you get one normal summon per turn. So that's definitely like a finite sort of thing. That's a limiter that's placed on your turn. But special summons are unlimited. You can special summon as many monsters as you want. Also in Yu-Gi-Oh, barring hard once per turns that we've seen in recent years, if you draw a card or you see a card, you can play it. You can always just play a card when you see it. And that's why things like Pot of Greed, for instance, have to be banned, because it's just, you can get card advantage. Getting more cards means you can play them immediately and just get more cards, and it ramps and leads to places. That's how a lot of stuff's ended up on the ban list. That's how a lot of crazy combos happen. I don't think that this is necessarily like a bad thing, but I think it's something that is interesting because Yu-Gi-Oh started off not like loads different than some of these other card games. It was a slower paced thing. The cards can feel like chess pieces, valuable resources. It's slow, it's steady, it's strategy, and all of that. It's been a more recent development in the last 5 or 6 years that we've gotten to this point of like spam out loads of monsters and all that. But I think when I compare and contrast these games, when I say that I have more appreciation and more dislike for Yu-Gi-Oh, the dislike comes from the fact that, like I said, there's the power creep element, because there's no rotation. Yeah. And it's just gotten a lot worse in recent years. People summon, all that stuff. That's what I basically just said. I have more respect for Yu-Gi-Oh, though, because it's very unique among card games. Now that I've played a few card games, they all do feel a bit samey. Like, Yu-Gi-Oh! Is the only card game that, because it doesn't have this resource system and kind of the same like defensive system as these other card games, it has life points instead of like, security and like checks and stuff like that. It feels very unique, and I think that's actually one of its strengths and why it's been able to last as long as it has and attract as many people as it has. In addition to, the good job that Konami does with like marketing and prize support and all that stuff. They do a pretty good job with that. I know people think they don't, but it's better than you think. I think that's one of the things Yu-Gi-Oh! Has going for it, is that it does feel a little bit more dynamic and a little bit more high octane. Even today, I mean, some people complain about the idea of hand traps, but I actually feel like they do add an element of interactivity that other games don't offer. Yeah, people say that, like, okay, sometimes your opponent just plays solitaire and they do a long turn, but if you do have hand traps, you will be getting to interact with them and they'll have to kind of deal with that. And once you've made a board, you'll be interacting with your opponent in their turn. You'll be choosing what to negate or what to disrupt. There's also trap cards that can be set and like activated in the opponent's turn, which in most of these other card games doesn't really exist. Once your turn ends, it's your opponent's turn and they kind of do what they want. So in that way, I have a lot more respect for Yu-Gi-Oh! It does feel more distinct. And, when you look at card games, I guess, on the whole, there's really the big three and then there's sort of everything else. The big three being Yu-Gi-Oh!, Pokemon, and Magic. I think they actually each hold on for very different reasons. Yu-Gi-Oh!, like I said, because it's unique. Magic, just because it's the oldest, and it also gets the most support for its alternative formats. So it's just got a great company behind it that does a lot of stuff. I know some of the stuff it does is controversial, but I don't play Magic. I don't know anything about that. I just know that Wizards of the Coast and Magic, it's got a very strong community. It's lasted for a long time, so that feels like they got to be doing something right there. And Pokemon, I think, really just persists because of the franchises notoriety. There's Pokemon games, there's Pokemon animes, there's Pokemon plushes. It's a cult phenomenon, pop culture phenomenon, and it's huge. The TCG almost gets to coast off of that. Like, they barely just release cards, and it's had a boom recently. But I mean, I think the TCG just coasts off the fact that the Pokemon property is so popular. Then you get into these other card games, and I've seen plenty of card games come and go. Let's see. Kaijudo, Versus System, Force of Will, Weiss Schwartz. I feel like I'm forgetting, obviously Cardfight Vanguard. There's been like the Dragon Ball card game, the Naruto card game, and I guess the most recent one being Digimon. These card games come and go. And I think, in addition to not necessarily being as large of properties as like Yu-Gi-Oh! Or Pokemon are, maybe not having the marketing dollars, I do feel like the sameness sometimes works against them. The fact that a lot of these card games almost feel like they are identical to the next card game or the last card game. Like I said at the beginning, I feel like Digimon doesn't feel all that much different than Vanguard. And like Vanguard doesn't feel all that much different than, you know what I mean? So in that way, if they feel like they're Magic clones or Pokemon clones, but just without the marketing behind them, I can see why some of these card games struggle. I want to be clear here, I'm not saying that like I'm glad that they struggle or that I hope that no other card game can... I've been enjoying Digimon. I want Digimon to do well. I want like any card game to do well. I like the idea that people can play whatever game they want and enjoy it. I'm just saying that I do see maybe that Yu-Gi-Oh's strength perhaps lies in its uniqueness, and so... Yeah, having said all that, I think that I'm very excited about Yu-Gi-Oh! Rush Duels because it's basically a new take on Yu-Gi-Oh! With an entirely different look to the cards, and the rules are kind of a lot different. I'm interested in seeing how Konami markets this and who they market it to, which I'm assuming would be kids, but like we know that they'll have to market it to adults in some fashion because we're the ones more familiar with Yu-Gi-Oh! So we'll definitely give Rush Duels a try. I think most people will. I'm interested in seeing it because the way that Rush Duels works is, it seems like it's just, it's like speed duels or duel links, but the fact that you can summon a lot of monsters every turn is really unique to me. At first I thought, wow, that's crazy, just unlimited, like, summons each turn. What? Like, that's crazy. But then you realize most of the monsters are fairly weak, and the monsters are kind of more so meant for warm bodies. They're meant to be able to just block a lot of attacks. They're meant to be able to be used for like tributes or for whatever you need them to be. They're also meant to be used as discards. And speaking of discards, Rush Duels has a lot of cards that involve like discarding to get just an attack boost. And you might think in normal Yu-Gi-Oh, why would I like discard one card to use this spell and it gives my monster like 1,000 attack? Like that's just a waste of card economy. But in Rush Duels, it's all a bit different because you draw until you have 5 cards every turn. So basically, with Rush Duels, there's this kind of underlying element of you can always make a comeback. And that's something that I really like. And it's actually a theme of the Yu-Gi-Oh! 7's anime, is just that Yu-Gi-Oh! Was too stuffy and all that, and so these kids created Rush Duels. And with Rush Duels, because you draw a card every turn, you can always make a comeback. Or not a card every turn, you draw until you have 5 cards in your hand every turn. You can always make a comeback. You can always summon a bunch of monsters and do something. It sounds crazy, but in practice it actually really works, and I quite like it. So I'm interested in seeing how that's received over here. In a way, it feels more similar to those other card games, the Vanguards, the Pokemon, the Digimon, than normal Yu-Gi-Oh! Because there aren't really like negations in Rush Duels and stuff like that. So I'm very curious. I want to know where this goes. Having played these other card games, it's given me a broader perspective on like just general card game design. So many card games work in that normal mold and Yu-Gi-Oh! Doesn't. And so Yu-Gi-Oh's had a lot of benefits from that, but it's also led down a road of, kind of no return with the power creep. So where will Rush Duels go? What will it end up looking like? How will people receive it? I'm very curious. I want to know. Anyways, that's it for the video. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it. Let me know what you think about card games in general. Have you been enjoying other card games perhaps more than Yu-Gi-Oh! Lately? I kind of have, but I think Yu-Gi-Oh! Will always be my baby, so it's just hard to say. Let me know down in the comments. Until next time, see you guys in the next one. Pass turn.